Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Ranking Member. Thank you to our panelists. This is my first term in office. And I represent a district where over 40% of the people that live there were born outside the country. So I care deeply about our immigration policy. The first trip I took as a member was to our southern border, because I care that we get it right there as well for our border communities and for our communities throughout the country. I care about both parts of this conversation. The other week, we remembered those who were lost in 9/11. This was a select committee after 9/11 to make sure that we protect the homeland from threats, domestic and foreign. And I had great hopes that this committee would be a place that we could engage with our colleagues in a meaningful way to take on these challenges. And I feel like I've tried in my individual capacity to do that work. But there's a long history on this committee, this Congress, of opportunities to come together where we've not been met halfway. We marked up H.R. 2, the Republican priority bill on the border, which would have caused the loss of human life on American soil because of the handcuffs that they would have put on NGOs that operate along the border to help other human beings. We've talked about the funding request that the president has made for more CBP officers to ensure that we have the latest technology for fentanyl detection. It was ignored. I know other colleagues have talked about the Senate border deal that was negotiated with Republicans, one of the most conservative Republicans in the Senate, never even got to the House. We consumed this committee's staff with an impeachment of Secretary Mayorkas. I think there were 5 impeachment reports that they put together to try to make the case. They didn't call one constitutional expert to come talk about high crimes and misdemeanors. I mean, so when we as Democrats are frustrated, we share the frustration with the American people who look to us and want us to get things done. We know we have to work across the aisle because we're in the minority party. That's what we came here to do. And every step along the way, we've been frustrated, even on H.R. 2. Blue Lotus, an administrative operation to combat fentanyl. I introduced an amendment to give legislative authority for future administrations to the same program. Not a Republican voted for it. On their own bill, a single amendment that dealt with fentanyl. Not one Republican voted for it. Show me where the good faith effort is. Just show me. Because we have done the work. You've listened to all of our colleagues who are frustrated. People in the Senate who negotiated a deal, they didn't even get a vote on it. So we're frustrated. It's not partisan. It's not political games. It's not political theater. It's not what we came here to do. I almost didn't even come down to this meeting because I'm so frustrated. I'm so sorry, especially so sorry for your loss and for so many like you who have experienced such devastating loss. And I am sorry. That's why I signed up for this job, to try to fix the things that are broken in this country. Our immigration system is broken. We feel it no matter where we live. We have an obligation to do something about it. I want to do something about it. I believe we have folks who have worked in CBP. We have folks who are sheriffs. Do you look to Congress and us as legislators for solutions to some of the challenges that you're all facing?
Yes.
Sir?
Yes, definitely. I consider that to be your job.
It is. And if I were a resident or you're a sheriff, I would look for you to make sure that our communities are safe. This is a two-way street. We listen. We show up to these committee hearings and listen to all the things that you are facing, that Border Patrol agents are facing, that border communities are facing. We listen, and I just wish we were doing more. So just know that I'm committed to trying to take on these challenges. So many of us really are. You may not see that here in this committee. You may not see that today. Rest assured, we're going to keep trying, and we're going to try to get to better places for all residents, both of our districts and throughout the country. So thank you all for being here today. Thank you for all that you do to advocate for these issues. I yield back.
Some of us vote to put the resources there at every opportunity, but the politics override reality.
And I said, Jim, you really going to go out on the limb here, man? Nobody's been able to succeed for 30 years. He said, this is the right thing to do. An immigration solution, a border solution. And then former President Trump came out and said, kill it. He's a conservative Republican from Oklahoma trying to do the right thing for America. And that's what his reward is.
Let me say that in the last appropriation bill, we had 22,000 Border Patrol agents in there. A majority of the Democrats on this committee voted to support that. However, our Republican colleagues didn't. So I just think that if we want to help, let's give the men and women who work the border every day the resources they need.
We have to change the rhetoric. We're all Americans. We are all expecting our federal government, the United States Congress, to solve the problems.
And we talk about the border crisis, but it's really a Washington, D.C. crisis, because this is not a new phenomenon. This has been going on for decades. And we can go back and forth about the numbers going up and down. You know, big impact on those charts is COVID. And when COVID is over, it started going back up again. And, you know, now the numbers are down because Mexico's enforcing a border because the president did his executive order. So we got to figure out how to get Democrats and Republicans to work together to address the very real concerns that every one of you have. And that America, what you see in this room is what's happening all over America every day. And people are just like, what the hell are you guys doing? We're sick of hearing you just attack each other instead of solving the problem. So it's not one thing. It's not one or the other. It's both sides. We got to secure the border. We have to fix the broken asylum system. And we got to treat people like human beings. I mean, everybody wants that. I don't care if you're the Republican witness, the Democratic witness. Everybody wants those three things.
That the rest of the world is scared to death because they see our American democracy on the brink of failure. And that does not speak well of the job we are doing here in Congress. Put partisanship aside and start working to stabilize this country and do what our taxpayers expect us to do.
So let's fix this broken system that we've had for decades. Stop the BS and try and find common ground so that people like yourselves who are sitting there and saying to yourselves, I am so sick of these guys going back and forth. Can't they just work it out? That I know you're all thinking in the back of your heads, like everybody in America is thinking, let's work it out. Let's work together. Let's get it done. I'm prepared to do it. I know lots of Republicans are. Let's try and make that happen.
A lot of the stuff I today was really focused on the election. Their fault, our fault. Statistics. Back home, people want solutions from us. I don't hear a lot of solutions today. Mr. Heitke, I started talking to you just a little bit about the resources. You talked about many places along the border that don't have the personnel. And as I told you earlier today, I met with the president, one of your local organizations on the border. And we discussed the fact that in about 2 or 3 years, you're going to have a tsunami of border agents retiring because most of them were hired after 9/11. There's a mandatory retirement age. I've not heard any discussion about how to replace them, how to hire them. We talked about the fact that this country has a massive debt. What are we going to do to increase the funding for our border security when we have a national debt? No solutions discussed. Mr. Desmond, you're a San Diego County Board of Supervisors. I was Orange County Board. A lot of ag in your area, I think. Should we deport all those undocumented workers out there? The answer is probably not. But we should give them a pathway to citizenship or just a pathway to be able to work in this country. Because they're the ones that produce our food. And I have not heard of any solutions to fixing the problem for those that have been waiting in line 20, 30 years. A lot of them are my constituents as well as they are yours. We haven't given you a solution. Mr. Hathaway, Sheriff Hathaway, man, I can only imagine what you go through at your town. 80, 90% Latino. I'll give you a little secret. I know racism doesn't exist, but I can't tell you how many times I've been pulled over by ICE to demand what, my citizenship was, and that's okay. I'll comply. But it's only folks that kind of look like me that have that treatment. I know it's national security. It's nothing but that. But you, my friend, are responding to your constituents, to your taxpayers, to your voters that say we expect certain respect from the government, from the sheriff. We want streets that are safe. We want to make sure there's policies that enable us to live like human beings and not have to fear police officers. We spent 20 years in the county of Orange trying to make sure that the people that lived in the shadows didn't fear reporting crimes to police. That's good policing. We're not a police state. The United States is not a police state. We have to have cooperation from our population to make sure we have safe streets. You, Sheriff, have a tough job, but you're not alone. The numbers, a beautiful chart out there, speaks volumes. But what's not on that chart is the story behind a lot of those numbers. We didn't talk about the COVID pandemic that devastated not only the U.S., half the countries in Latin America are non-functional right now. You go to Honduras, that economy is on lifeline. Other countries in Latin America, Colombia right now has about 4 million Venezuelan refugees. Costa Rica, ditto. Mexico, trying to figure out a handle to the problem. And by the way, the other issue nobody talked about today is Mexico's cooperation with the U.S. today. They're our biggest trading partner, and they're stepping up to the plate. It's never enough. But, we want to work on a solution, for example, safe pathways to the U.S. to work, and also databases that track those criminals so Ms. Morin's situation is not repeated. Those are real solutions that we're working on and we can continue to work on. Dreamers, okay? That population of kids who are here, now adults, some of them that actually have made the ultimate sacrifice in the military for our country and whose families are still living in the shadows. It's not an issue for Homeland Security, but it is connected to Homeland Security. Former Secretary of Homeland Security, General Kelly, who used to be President Trump's chief of staff, would say border security does not start or end at the border. If anything negative gets to the border, you're already too late. And he was in charge of Southcom, which is the Southern Command, U.S. military in Latin America. He understood that it wasn't about the border, but it was about the region. I didn't hear any discussion about these issues today. And Mr. Chairman, we've got a lot of work to do. It's not your fault. It's not their fault. It's our job to fix these problems. The American taxpayers are asking us to be practical and do it. 60 days out, and we're talking essentially political rhetoric here about the election. Senator Langford is a guy I talk to a lot. He put his neck out in the line as an elected official to come up with an immigration solution. He really worked hard. And I looked at and I said, Jim, you really going to go out on the limb here, man? Nobody's been able to succeed for 30 years. He said, this is the right thing to do. An immigration solution, a border solution. And then former President Trump came out and said, kill it. He's a conservative Republican from Oklahoma trying to do the right thing for America. And that's what his reward is. We have to change the rhetoric. We're all Americans. we are all expecting our federal government, the United States Congress, to solve the problems. You know, most of us here are married. Do you ever go home and say, I get 100% on the decisions with my wife? Your spouse? Of course not. You negotiate the deal, and if you get most of it, you've cut a good deal. You don't agree 100% with your wife, with your spouse when you're cutting the deals. Why do we expect to come to Congress and agree 100% with the other side? Hope we can move forward. Homeland Security was designed, this committee, that agency was designed after 9/11 to work together, not as a partisan committee, but as a committee that worked across the aisle to protect Americans from foreign and domestic terrorism. We have to get back to doing our job and doing it right. We've got the Secret Service that's also under our jurisdiction, and they're having a hell of a time protecting our presidential candidates. And those two articles I submitted for the record today are a glimpse that the rest of the world is scared to death because they see our American democracy on the brink of failure. And that does not speak well of the job we are doing here in Congress. Put partisanship aside and start working to stabilize this country and do what our taxpayers expect us to do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I yield.